Hello Internet, my name is Lave and I watched The Post, which is directed by the one and only Steven Spielberg. Here he's telling the true story behind the leaked Pentagon Papers, the classified US government documents which exposed the truth behind the Vietnam War, and the ensuing battle between the press and the government and their right to publish it. So before I get into it, I want to talk about Spielberg. I absolutely love him, who doesn't? I grew up on his films and I just completely admire his ability and his efficiency to, on the one hand, create films which are just so entertaining and just pure escapism, but then on the other hand, he can make films at the same time, and I do mean the same time, which are more politically charged and intellectual and full of Oscar-winning performances. And he's been doing it for a long time. Back in 1993, he released Jurassic Park and Schindler's List in the same year. That's amazing. He also did it again in 2005 with War of the Worlds and Munich. And this year, he's doing it again. Later on this year, we're getting Ready Player One, which looks extremely fun. I'm eagerly awaiting that. And he's also done The Post. Now apparently he fast-tracked the production of The Post, which is something that I'll come back to later on in this review, but for now I'm going to assume that of the two films, The Post is going to be the more dramatic films, and it is an entertaining one. I wouldn't say that it's an edge-of-your-seat drama, but it is efficiently done and it is really interesting. I personally loved seeing the nuts and bolts of the newsroom and how it was all done back in the day in this analog world pre-digitization. But I particularly liked the intricacies of this group of people that he's exploring, the networking and the friendly rivalry between the editors and the journalists of the opposing papers. Now I'm not American and I don't read American newspapers, so I actually didn't know that it was the New York Times that actually published the story first. And what's really interesting is that Tom Hanks's character, Ben Bradley, instinctively knows that they're about to drop this huge story. He doesn't know what it is, he just knows that something's going to drop, and when it eventually does, it's really about him and his team trying to track down the same sources so that they can keep up with it and keep on trend. And whilst they're trying to keep up, Nixon is taking out all these injunctions on the New York Post and bringing them into legal battles, so it becomes a question of, will the Post get into that same legal battle or not? Now, part of me was actually thinking there is a good movie in that alone, with the New York Times finding the story and breaking the story, but that's just the setup for this film. What this film is choosing to focus on is actually the character Meryl Streep is playing, Katharine Graham. She's the owner and publisher of the Washington Post, and again, I didn't know who this person was, so I appreciated all of the exposition to explain how she inherited this company from her father, who actually left it to her husband, but then he committed suicide, so the responsibility is on her. So it really is a film about this woman trying to find her voice in this world run by men. I mean, even Tom Hanks's character at the beginning of the film walks all over her. He says, "Stop putting your finger in my eye, Catherine," and she just accepts it. So it's really interesting to see how this character evolves as the film progresses, as this huge decision falls on her lap. I mean, the pressure that she must have been under was immense, and I particularly found her character arc and her performance especially satisfying. So I mentioned at the top of this review that this film was fast-tracked, and it's clear to see why, because it does parallel events which are happening in our life today with Trump's administration. I mean, the more things change, the more they stay the same. And even this time last year, Streep and Trump did have a bit of a spat over Twitter and the Golden Globes, so it's clear that they were capitalising on this relevance. But I do wonder if some of the inventiveness was lost in their eagerness to get it to screen as soon as possible. I do think that it feels a bit like a made-for-TV film, just with an A-list cast. I mean, it is a bit wiggy, and I think some of the production values are a bit dodgy in some scenes. There's one early scene in a car where I thought, oh, that's obvious green screen. I don't know, there's something very run-of-the-mill about it. I mean, just as another example, the film starts in Vietnam with one of the reporters going through the jungle and following these soldiers, and in the background it's got the "Run Through the Jungle" song, and that's just something that we've seen in pretty much every Vietnam film. And then it gets into the newsroom drama and it's all good, but it's just nothing that we haven't seen before. I mean, 2015 we had Spotlight. I can't fault the film for anything, it is good, but it's nothing that we haven't seen before. So that's my thoughts on The Post, and pause the video if you want to take a closer look at my enjoyment tracker now. I actually wrote in my notes that this film was boring boringly brilliant, and I think that is doing it a disservice because I was never bored throughout the film. It is engaging, it is interesting and relevant, so perhaps it's better to say that it's predictably good. It probably is going to get a bunch of Oscar nominations, but it's not something that I feel like I'm going to buy on Blu-ray. I might watch it again if it's on TV, but, you know, just bring on Ready Player One, I guess. So thanks very much for watching my review of The Post. I really do appreciate it. If you can, give this video a like, and don't forget to share the Lave. Run through the jungle. Subscribe